Babylon's Fall launched as a full-price AAA game that promised a great experience, but within a year, it was averaging 1 concurrent player, and was shut down not long after that.
And there have been a lot of AAA game failures in the past decade or so. Failures of all kinds. Some that started out bad and managed to turn it around, and some that started out bad and ended up losing their company $400 million. But this is one I don't often see talked about.
For something backed by Square Enix, developed by Platinum Games, fresh off of Nier Automata, and released as a full-price AAA game, Babylon's Fall disappeared with honestly impressive speed. And it's not talked about now in the same way a game like Concord is, even if it has a similar failure.
So what happened? What is Babylon's Fall? And why did it fail despite seeming like it should be a hit based off its developers? Well, I've done a bunch of research into this game's story, and I'm here today to lay out all the facts for you. So sit back and enjoy.
To start off, the game was initially revealed at E3 in 2018, to be released in 2019. However, development did not go as planned, a large part of this being cited to the COVID-19 pandemic. Either way, it wasn't until 2021 when we actually got more information on the game. And here comes one of the most important parts of this game's story. You see, when it was first announced in 2018, the initial game trailer showed only single-player gameplay. And this was coming from Platinum Games, who had just made the very well-received solo RPG Nier Automata. Personally, one of my favorite games, and a really creative title in the entire world of video games. All of a sudden, in the new E3 2021 trailer, the game is labeled as a live service title. Developers insisted that it was always envisioned as a multiplayer game, even saying it aims to be Nier Automata that never ends. But this is just a classic case of not really knowing your target audience. Based on the studios behind the game, generally known for their big single-player RPGs, that's pretty much what was expected. And I am all for creativity in games, don't get me wrong. I think one studio being wrapped into making the same kind of game every single time can be pretty limiting. But there's a clear difference between that and chasing current trends to try and cash in. But I'm getting ahead of myself now.
The game was apparently intended to appeal to all the mainstream gamers, playing all the big multiplayer hits. And apart from what I just mentioned about the flawed target marketing, there was also another big problem, and that was free-to-play games.
Despite its focus on multiplayer gameplay, Babylon's Fall was still going to be a full-price AAA game. But at this point, free-to-play multiplayer games were more popular than ever. Titles like Fortnite, Valorant, Apex Legends were great at appealing to huge audiences, not only because they're fun, but also because they are free. You can buy things in the game, but you also can just not do that. And then it's a completely free hundreds of hours of playtime. So to sell a full-price multiplayer game was already a challenge. Not an impossible one, but definitely a more difficult task. And the performance of the game unfortunately reflected this.
Okay, so at this point you're probably thinking it's a little bit scummy to get people excited for a Platinum Games title just for it to be a live service multiplayer game, but that's not the end of the world. Development can change a lot in a few years. Babylon's Fall was not off to a good start, but it could get a lot worse. And oh boy, did it get a lot worse.
So, Babylon's Fall was a full-price AAA game at the time, meaning $80 Canadian or $60 American, I believe. However, a big issue was the extensive monetization within the game as well. There was a premium currency called Garas? I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right. That can only be achieved through buying it with real-life money. This premium currency offered no gameplay advantages, just some cosmetic changes, as is often seen with, well, free-to-play multiplayer games. Similarly, there was an in-game battle pass that could be purchased with Garas, also giving cosmetic rewards. So even right now, this already seems a little troubling. After the rocky marketing we just talked about, extreme monetization in an already expensive game pretty much cemented Babylon's Fall as a failure. I love cosmetics in games, in all kinds of games. I know lots of people like to just show off in multiplayer games, but literally some of my favorite customization comes with cool single-player armor sets and character customizers, like in a game like Elden Ring. And I think all of these neat extra cosmetic items that, if we're being honest, a lot of the time you don't actually need, are assumed to come with the paid title. You pay for the single player game, you expect all the content. But Babylon's Fall didn't do this. It's like if From Software locked all their armor sets and character customizer behind a paid currency. It just doesn't sit well with anyone.
Microtransactions, loot boxes, premium currencies were already starting to dwindle at this point, just based off how many people were getting tired of them. So putting them inside a full price paid game was something rarely heard of, and that rarely went over well. However, at the very least, at least you're gonna get some good value and good style with the cosmetics you're purchasing. Right? No.
This article on the 6th axis goes over a lot of information about Babylon's Fall premium currency. The most expensive amount of Geras you can buy is 10,000 Geras, which costs £74, 14 pounds more than the entire game. To max out the Battle Pass, which is obviously not the intended way to complete it, but it is still an option, would cost 15,000 Geras, or 110 pounds. They wrap up the article by commenting, "The value you're getting from Geras is laughable," noting that an individual character skin might cost more than 10 pounds. So even the people buying the premium currency were saying it's a waste and that you should avoid it. And it's worth noting the art style of Babylon's Fall was a big point of controversy. I'm not hating on it. I don't think it's terrible. It's probably not my pick, and it was definitely not most people's. It did not get a lot of love, which probably didn't help with the cosmetic sales. Square Enix hasn't learned from its previous live service blunders, it seems, implementing one of the worst attempts to further monetize a full-price video game. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself.
So after all this, we got all the trailers, the developer discussions, the reviews. It was finally time for Babylon's Fall to release to the public and for everyone to figure out what they thought of the game. And it went just about as you'd expect.
When released on Steam, Babylon's Fall had an all-time peak player count of 1,188. It sits at a 41 on Metacritic with a 2.4 in user reviews currently. Here's some direct quotes I pulled from the reviews on Steam about the game. One says, "The monetization is genuinely atrocious." Another calls it an absolutely terrible cash grab of a game. Both of these, and almost every review of the game, share the same sentiment this user says with, "This game pushes microtransactions like it were a free-to-play game." If it wasn't clear enough, microtransactions were by far the most contested point of the game with the players. One user commented, "It wouldn't surprise me if it came back as a free-to-play game," further cementing the fact that people were so upset with the aggressiveness of the in-game purchases, largely due to the fact that it was already a full-price game. It was difficult to find reviews that discussed any other elements of the game, but if one thing seemed to get a little bit of praise, it was the combat, as you would expect from the developers of Nier Automata. However, the rest of the game and overall game progression were cited as pretty boring and just slow. So clearly, the fact that almost every single user review of this game mentions something about the in-game purchases of Babylon's Fall, this is what stopped the majority of people from buying the game. This, in combination with all the other controversies and issues I've mentioned, are the direct reason why less than 1 year after its initial launch, Babylon's Fall was averaging 1 to 3 concurrent players on Steam, and its servers were shut down permanently.
And that's where Babylon's Fall stands to this day. It was nothing short of a disaster for everyone involved. involved.
Now, I should mention that in doing the research for this video, which was originally created for a school project, I have to note that not a lot of internal information is available on this game. Actual statistics like sales numbers, the cost to make the game, actual details of its failed development are not very easy to find. I think the number one reason why a game like Concord became such a big story on video game failures was because of that rumor it lost everyone involved like hundreds of millions of dollars, because that is a very large number. And Babylon's Fall probably did not lose that much money, but it undoubtedly lost a lot for Square Enix, but we will never know the exact number. As I said, we really don't know much about the development, but I do feel bad for the passionate game designers who had to work on this game. It's not a bad idea game-wise, but with the amount of corporate interference that went into the monetization of the game, I can't imagine working on it was very fulfilling. So, as always, don't blame the developers, blame the big companies and CEOs behind it. I don't know a single good game designer who actually wants to incorporate premium currencies or battle passes into their games. And let's zoom out and look at Square Enix as a publisher, because this was not just one isolated mistake. Babylon's Fall fits into a much larger pattern of Square Enix repeatedly chasing trends over playing to the strengths of its studios. They have been obsessed with the idea of finding their own big live service hit that will generate seemingly infinite money. They're Fortnite or Destiny, and this makes sense for executives. These are some of the most successful games of our time, but to try and force teams and franchises into these types of games is always the wrong way to do it. Marvel's Avengers is the most obvious comparison, a full-price game loaded with microtransactions, released in a broken state, and ended up in about the exact same condition as Babylon's Fall did. Although it did have the Avengers IP behind it, which maybe made the failure even a little more disappointing to a lot of people. Even Chocobo GP, a kart racer, launched with aggressive monetization systems that felt wildly out of place. It just seems like the monetization comes first in these games, and the actual game is left to be figured out later. But that doesn't work with fans anymore.
And it's just annoying because Square Enix has studios that excel at complete single-player experiences. Games that sell well because they are not designed to be never-ending multiplayer titles. And yet they keep trying to cash in on this live service trend. But it's a little bit too late for that now. And by the time Babylon's Fall released, people were too tired of battle passes and premium currencies to care for it.
And on this point, Babylon's Fall would still be a disappointing game if it were developed by almost anyone else, but what makes it sting so much to me personally is more who made it. This was Platinum Games, a developer whose single-player experiences I have played and loved. Nier Automata, Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising, these are some great single-player games that Platinum Games was known for. And that's exactly why the original 2018 reveal of Babylon's Fall generated interest. The shift to a live service model clashed with Platinum's identity as a game studio. And it's not surprising the combat was the part of Babylon's Fall to be praised. But this just really sucks, because maybe underneath all the negatives I've talked about in this video, there was a great game. But instead, we got the Babylon's Fall that we did, and it failed, despite the great studio behind it. At the very least, we can be happy that this game didn't lead to the failure of the entire studio, as is seen in so many other cases. And this is in large part because Platinum Games is a very big studio, so Babylon's Fall was not their only project.
So, in conclusion, Babylon's Fall did not fail because it was unplayable. It failed because it was designed to extract players' money before it ever earned their trust. And it's a great case study of why developers need to stop mistaking monetization for longevity. Games like this will keep launching and keep disappearing just as fast. And that is about all I have to say about Babylon's Fall today. Thank you for listening to my depiction of the game's epic failure. I hope I got all of the facts right. I'll cite my sources in the description of the video, but thank you for listening either way. If there's some mistakes I made, just let me know in the comments, please. Thanks for listening once again, and I hope to see you guys in another video. Thanks. Bye.